Welcome into episode 43 of the Josh Hendrickson Show. I'm Neal McCready, joined as always by Josh Hendrickson, Chair of Economics at the University of Mississippi, otherwise known as Ole Miss. It's been almost a month, Josh, since we've been together. I think it was June the 11th was the last, June the 11th. Back then, that was the day that the Thunder were about to play Game 3. I don't know if you heard, Oklahoma City Thunder won the NBA World Championship. So, just in case you needed to know. So, if you have questions for Josh, you can ask them to me on Twitter. I've got my tweet thing up. You can also ask here in the stream as well. So, we'll talk about a few things, and then if you guys have some things you want to ask, we'll get to it. We're going to talk big, beautiful Bill. But that's definitely on the list. I'm not sure if it's one or two on the list. I'll tell you what, we'll start with this. We'll start with the Cubs. Someone asked already in the stream, Zach wants to know, are the Cubs World Series contenders? As we sit here on July the 9th, as we watch the Dodgers try to salvage a game in Milwaukee, what are your thoughts on the Cubs?
I think they are probably a starter and a late inning reliever away from being World Series contenders. I think
they need to add a third baseman also. I like Shaw. I would not trust Shaw in a playoff game in a key at bat. Talking about Matt Shaw, the Cubs third baseman. I would not. If there's a package that they could do with Arizona that includes Eugenio Suarez, I would say that would be a game changer for them because it would add another bat to the lineup.
But I think anytime that you are complaining about a guy who's probably like your 8th or 9th hitter in the lineup, you're probably in good shape. I think.
Well, they would let me move Dansby to 9. But your point is taken. I understand.
But I think it's an exciting team. It's a fun team. It's a young team. So I think also you need to be a little bit patient here. Because I think that you do have a pretty wide window with the talent, and I'm one of these people where if you can go win a World Series, you should try to win the World Series even if you have a wide window because you don't know who's going to get injured tomorrow or what kind of travesty is going to strike your team. But at the same time, you don't need to do something desperate, which I trust this front office not to do. In fact, my fear would be in the other direction that they're too conservative and they're like, we can win it with who we've got, which I don't think is true. With that. I mean, I guess it is true, but it would take a little bit of luck. I think when you get into those really short series, I think that's when a lot of the pitching is going to hurt them. Yeah,
they miss Justin Steele badly. That would be of great benefit to have him out there every 5 days. And now that Tyone is out for at least a month, even though he hasn't been dominant, he's been an innings eater. You're counting on Imanaga and probably the kid Horton, which is a tall ask. And you're and Matthew Boyd's been great, but you're probably a pitch. Yeah, you're a pitcher short, and you'd love to add somebody who could pitch in the back end of that bullpen to go along with who they've got.
Well, and you got to figure, too, with Matthew Boyd, he's had an incredible season, but you got to be a little bit afraid of, some mean reversion as the season goes on because I do think he's capable of being a really good pitcher, but, he's basically playing at his best right now. And you can't count on somebody to play at their very best all season. The season.
Shea Gilgeous-Alexander did it.
The season is long, and it's hard. So we'll see. But I'm excited just because they're fun to watch. They're exciting. The team has just been so boring for so long that it's just finally fun again.
No, they have fun players.
Yeah.
Pete Crow Armstrong's a lot of fun. Seiya Suzuki's fun. Kyle Tucker's just like watching. He's like watching a very, he's like a fine-tuned race car without all the decals and stuff. You just watch the car. He's just kind of
Well, and
He's just kind of a consummate baseball player without being particularly flashy.
I don't like to have like these conversations because like there's only a certain number of spaces. So whenever you do this kind of complaint that I'm about to do, like it's kind of unfair because they're you can't have everybody. But like the idea that like Suzuki's not an all-star is just it's preposterous. And I think part of it too is like I think part of the reason he kind of got screwed is like the two other outfielders were already voted in, and so I think I think that having like 3 Cubs outfielders maybe, hurt his chances. But I don't know. I mean, he should be an all-star. He probably will still end up being an all-star. Somebody will get hurt. Somebody will get hurt, or somebody will just, or somebody's already has a nagging injury and is just going to bow out, and he'll probably replace them. But he should be an all-star.
All right, we'll start here. Austin with the super chat gets to the thing that I kind of wanted to get into as well. He says, hey, guys, it's been a terrible week for the administration this week. I'm assuming that he means the Trump administration. Why do you think the file debacle, I assume he means the Epstein file debacle, has taken place the way it has? And is it fixable?
So I think what we have to do is we have to outline every possibility here that could be true, and then maybe assign probabilities to what we think is going on. Okay, so here's the easiest way to frame this. So it's possible that they're lying. It's possible that they're telling the truth. So let's explore the truth for a minute.
Okay.
It is possible that they are telling the truth in one of two contexts. So I think one of the things that people forget about is that the actual crimes that Epstein was originally committed for happened a very, very long time ago. And they were resurrected by the Miami Herald, by an investigative reporter who was basically trying to figure out why this didn't get the attention that it deserved and whether what Epstein was up to was still going on and things like that. And she kind of got this kicked off again. But I think one of the contexts that we have to understand is that a lot of the reason that reporters at the time latched onto this story is they latched onto the story because they could tie it to Alex Acosta, who was working in the first Trump administration and who had been the U.S. attorney who had overseen Epstein's conviction. And so I think that there's a possibility, right, that that some of the things that have been said were unsubstantiated, or that there was less evidence about them because the media saw an opportunity to go get a scalp, and they saw an opportunity to basically say, oh, here's this Alex Acosta guy. Look at who Trump surrounds himself with. He surrounds himself with these people. This guy let off, this horrible human being with like the lightest sentence. And I think they saw a scalp, and I think they thought that they could tie this to the administration. I think they saw the ties to Trump himself because, there are pictures and videos of him with Epstein. And so I think they thought maybe there was something there. Because if you recall, the first Trump administration was essentially consisted of this: the walls are closing in. It's only a matter of time. The walls are closing in.
Yes.
But there's a great tweet out there back from like 2016 where this guy's like, my entire feed is just, let's see Donnie Trump wriggle out of this one. And then it's like Donald Trump proceeds to wriggle out of it. And then he's like, well, nevertheless. And that was really the entire first thing. So it's possible... Yep. So it's possible that some of the more salacious stuff that came out is maybe not true, and that it got blown out of the proportion by an overzealous media who wanted this to be out. There's another way that they could be telling the truth.
Okay.
And that is, let's suppose that
how do you say Maxwell's first name, by the way?
Ghislaine.
Ghislaine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other way that they could be telling the truth is, okay, suppose that he was actually working for intelligence, like U.S. intelligence, foreign intelligence, somebody, right?
Okay.
If he was actually working for intelligence, wouldn't the people in that intelligence agency try to clean this stuff up? So, for example, you announce that you're going to arrest somebody and you're going to process a search warrant. If I'm an intelligence agency, I make sure that I have somebody present when the search warrant is conducted. I make sure that that person finds and destroys evidence that would implicate the intelligence service in this wrongdoing. In which case, it's possible that they look through the evidence and they don't find anything in the evidence because it's been destroyed. Okay. So I think those are two ways that they could actually be telling the truth. Is that yeah, like this guy was a horrible human being, but like maybe like some of the stuff about the broader implications of what he was involved in were blown out of proportion and we don't really understand it. The other thing is that if this was an actual intelligence operation, you would expect a competent intelligence agency to figure out a way to get rid of the evidence before it was revealed to people who they don't want to know. Now, there's also then the chance that they're actually just lying and that they're just trying. And so, but then you have to think, okay, why? Why would you lie?
Okay.
And the why would you lie is actually pretty difficult because the why would you lie, it's not like this is something that people cared about that they never talked about, right? Like if this was something that like the American public was kind of obsessed with, but like that nobody in Trump's orbit had ever talked about, and then they came out and said, yeah, we didn't find any evidence. Well, they might be lying, or they could just be like, we're not even looking into this. Just leave us alone. Like we're not doing that. The problem is that both Pam Bondi and Kash Patel have been making public statements essentially about.
And they had that deal at the White House very early on where the people were invited to come get the first release of the files. Remember this?
Yes. Yeah.
Turns out there was nothing in the folders. And that now looks like if they're telling the truth, well, then what the hell was that? An attempt to trick the American public? I mean, to give some red meat to the hardest core of the MAGA people that viewed this as, hey, this is going to be the thing that brings down Barack Obama and Bill Clinton and all the people. This is going to be this salacious thing that's going to just expose the filth of the swamp that is Washington, right? That's what was implied in this, was that all of these people went down with Epstein to his place and had their way with 13-year-old girls.
Yeah, I don't think that. So in terms of why would they lie? It's possible that they actually dug into this and realized that it would just not be in the interest of the United States government to release what they know. And so the best thing to do is just to lie. That's possible.
Well, I mean, if you believe any of the other conspiracy theories that are out there at all, then there is a track record of the American government, regardless of which party is in power, doing that.
Well, and then the other thing is, I mean, the other reason to lie is actually you found out information that you didn't know about some of your enemies, and actually you're just going to use this against them. And so you don't want to make it public because then you can't hold it over their heads to get them to do what you want them to do. So that's also another potential reason to lie. The handling of it is kind of bizarre because the handling of it makes it seem like they're not taking it seriously. And I think that's what really like sort of upset people is not so much that they were like, hey, we investigated this and turns out like, this guy's just a creep. And that, that's it. That's all there is to it. I think that the way that they handled it is just not that, like, it's not acceptable to people because it doesn't seem like they took it seriously. It doesn't seem like they really, dug in and looked through everything and tried to figure stuff out. And so it's just, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But I think that, most of what the administration has done so far has been like very deliberate. And so that makes it stand out as being weird also, because it seems like they were just like, there's nothing here. We're just moving on. And so but also, even if you did look at it and you realize that, you would think that they would slow roll it, or you would think that they would kind of like keep kicking the can down the road. Like, we're looking into it. Well, like takes a long time to go through these documents, right? Like this kind of thing.
I don't think they intended for it to come out the way that it came out. I do think it was a leak.
And so the thing is that it's like the entire way that they've handled it is just bizarre. And I think that is what is, but I think that, that is what it is. But, the other thing too is that, another thing Trump likes to do is he likes to distract, right? So there's something else going on that maybe he doesn't want you to talk about. And so he throws out something. That's generally when he says something kind of crazy, or that's generally when he throws out some kooky idea and then walks it back a couple of days later. Well, I just, just thinking out loud, And so it's also possible that they knew that they weren't going to be able to provide what needed to be provided, and they knew that this would kind of take over the news cycle for a couple of days. And so they were just like, because if you notice, they also announced that the FBI has opened investigations into Comey and Brennan and these guys for their role in this whole Russia collusion hoax. And so it's possible that, because the media is not going to cover that in a way that's favorable to Trump. They're going to cover that as this is fascism, and he's going after former members of the government and things like that. And so maybe it was a way to sort of distract people from talking about those investigations that were announced and things like that. But the whole thing is bizarre. I mean, I think we should apply probabilities to these things. Like, I don't think so. I named like 4 possibilities, and I don't think that any of the probabilities is 0. Like, I mean, the first scenario in which this is all just kind of blown out of proportion, and actually he was just like this super creepy guy who just was like well connected. I don't think the probability is 0. I don't think it's into double digits either. Like, I think it's a single digit probability. Yeah. Right. Okay. I think that,
the second one that you gave is the one that I think I would put my chips on.
No, I think that's the other one, is that, they might have gotten in there and realized, hey, somebody's kind of covered the tracks here. Right. And so there's no, but I do think, like, another thing too is I think it is actually important to read the language carefully, because like what they said and what they did and what they didn't say are both important, right? They made very specific claims about what they did not have evidence of.
They had no evidence that Jeffrey Epstein blackmailed powerful figures, kept a client list, or was murdered.
So there is no client list.
No.
There's no client list. Like, even if he was doing everything that he has been accused of doing, he didn't have a list of people and with all of their names and all of, the wrongdoing that they had done.
You remember in Cheers, Sam Malone kept a black book?
Yes.
So if he get a Friday night and things hadn't been going right, he needed to go back in and hit up a couple and maybe see where he could have some success that night, right? Epstein didn't keep a Sam Malone black book. I mean, he didn't do that. Nobody's well, some people are that stupid, but there's no evidence that he was that stupid.
Well, and he did have years ago, somebody leaked his
his Rolodex.
Yeah. So we know who was part of his context, but we don't. But yeah, like, it's in terms of like a client list.
Well, like Sam would make notes about who was particularly friendly and who wasn't. Who was a good companion on Saturday night and who wasn't. I think he had a grading system. Right. I mean, there was no evidence. I guess that if you told me there's no evidence that he kept those types of notes.
But I mean, I think
I do like the tweet where the guy goes, because I can't believe Epstein killed himself right before he was about to be acquitted due to a complete lack of evidence.
there was another one that was like, let this be a lesson to everybody. It was like Epstein killed himself. Turns out like the government didn't even have any evidence. And then they were like, let this be a lesson. Never kill yourself. Like, never give up. And no, I think it's
The guy that goes, actually, Jeffrey Epstein never even existed.
he never even existed. He's not even a person. Like, we don't have any record of this person. No, I mean, I think, look, it's worth giving those probabilities. I think it's worth stating like things that we know that are just weird, right? Like the reason this story took off, like, because here's the thing that's bothering me is the past couple of days on social media, you have all these people who are now coming out of the woodwork where they're like, I never really thought this was a thing. I always thought people were just like, blowing this out of proportion. Like I couldn't care less about this guy. Like all these kinds of things, right? And all these people who are just like, well, there are more important things for us to worry about. I agree. There are more important things for us to worry about. But the thing is like, what bothers me about all those comments is there's actually like a lot of things that just don't make sense, right? Like about the whole thing. And that's what kicked this whole thing off in the first place is like, okay, you have a college dropout who gets hired to teach math at an elite private school in New York City. And the guy who hires him used to work in intelligence, and his name is Donald Barr, who had a son, Bill Barr, who happens to be the attorney general, who like brought charges against him, like before he was killed / committed suicide or whatever. That's bizarre, right? His relationship with Leslie Wexner, who was like the richest guy in Ohio and like the CEO of like the Limited and all this kind of stuff, where that guy like signed like a power of attorney over to him and like gave him a house in New York City and like all this kind of stuff. Like that's weird. That's weird.
Yes.
Like people should be allowed to be like, what's going on there? Right. Like
that's the part where he looks like he's an agent.
Well, and the fact that he was the other thing is that the story about him was that he was like a wealthy hedge fund manager. And the problem is that in the hedge fund world, like all the big hedge fund managers, like if you're that successful, all the big hedge fund managers, they all know each other. They all know about each other, even if they don't know, like actually know each other. And like none of them had ever heard of this guy. Like they were like, I don't know what he does. Like, I don't know how he made all this money. And so there were lots of things. Like there are lots of reasons for people to be curious about this. There are a ton of reasons. And, Ghislaine Maxwell, her father was long rumored to be like a Mossad agent, like how does she fit into the whole thing? I think the other thing that people thought was very weird is that they didn't prosecute any of, like they prosecuted, they tried to prosecute Epstein and then they prosecuted Maxwell, but like they didn't prosecute any of the clients. They didn't prosecute anybody who, they were prosecuting them for sex trafficking, but then the people who were actually like the recipients did not like get prosecuted, right? So like that. So again, that didn't really make any sense to people. So I mean, the idea that people shouldn't be like kind of like what the hell's going on, I think that like we should be reasonable here and look at this and go, this is a really bizarre situation. Clearly something was going on here, and so then the question is like, why are we not allowed to get to the bottom of it? I think that's the other thing that drives people crazy is it's just like, okay, this became a thing. It got drawn out and drawn out and drawn out. And we found out more and more and more information about this person. Mm-hmm. And, another bizarre thing that happened is that, he made frequent trips to the White House when Bill Clinton was president, and he met with a guy named Mark Middleton who worked for Bill Clinton at the White House. And shortly after, like this Epstein stuff was sort of dominating like news cycles and stuff like that, Mark Middleton committed suicide by shooting himself in the chest with a shotgun and then hanging himself. Which
happens.
It seems,
if you've made up your mind.
I mean, it seems like the wrong way to go, but
I had someone tell me recently that I should kill myself. And when he said that to me, I thought, well, the way I will do it is with a shotgun, and then I will hang myself after I've shot myself in the chest with a shotgun.
I mean, it is completely bizarre.
That was fun, by the way. Someone looks you in the eye and say, kill yourself. That's aggressive.
This is I don't know if I should touch that, but the
I mean, I yelled some stuff at TJ McConnell during the NBA Finals, but I never wished real bodily harm.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, maybe a sprained ankle, but
so I don't know what's going on in terms of like why did they, why did they decide to do this? Why did they decide to do it now? It's not, it's not particularly clear. And so, and there's lots of possibilities. I'm not going to speculate on like some of the wilder possibilities of what could be going on, but I think we can all, I don't think I have to. I think, we can all kind of figure out, different scenarios, but I think that it is bizarre. And people, and my problem is like all the people who are just like, well, that's settled. I guess that's over. How silly were we? I think that's also kind of ridiculous because there's all this sort of like revisionism where now there's all of a sudden these people on Twitter who are all just kind of like, well, I never believed this was a thing. And of course this was the inevitable outcome and that kind of thing. And it's like, no, like people had a reason to
of course,
to ask questions and to say like, who was this guy and what in the world was he up to? That it's not normal.
Webb Moore, thank you for the super chat. He says, Josh, I feel tariffs will be painful at first, but will ultimately help the U.S. and make us a lot wealthier. What is your opinion?
Well, that's the objective. One of the things I talk to people about all the time, and even people in my profession kind of, they make like these weird arguments that I don't, that I think are like factually correct, but also like masking like the truth. And that is, if you look, like we have data on like industrial production, going back like over 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go back and you look at this data, what you notice is that, yes, we produce more like manufacturing goods and things like that than we've ever produced before. That is true. And people look at that and they say, well, see, so it can't be destroying manufacturing because look at how much more stuff that we produce. The problem is if you look at that data, over the last 100 years, what you'll notice is that up until the early 1970s, industrial production grew at a pretty constant trend. And there weren't that many, other than like the Great Depression, there are not like big fluctuations away from that trend over time. And the problem is that what you see is like after the 1970s, we've just been like, if I made a prediction in like 1971 of what our industrial production would be, based on that trend, I would have been off by a very, very large amount because what has happened over that time is we've fallen behind that trend. So in other words, when people are complaining about like our industrial capacity as a country, they're not saying that like we produce less than we produced before. What they're saying is we're producing less than we expected to be producing at this point in time. And not only that, but it's been that way for years and it's getting worse. And if you look at the data, it's obvious. It's obvious in the data. Like, I've been asked to come and give talks to a lot of different groups about tariffs. And when I put up that chart, like I don't even have to explain it to people. Like I just tell them what it is and they see it. And they're like, oh, like I did not realize this because it's that obvious. And I think that the reason that we are in this position is because of the dollar's place in the world. The dollar is the global reserve currency. There's nothing that backs the dollar. So there's no constraint on the number of dollars that you can create. There's no constraint on like people's demand for those dollars. And so what has happened is because we're in this dollar-based system, the dollar is much more valuable than it should be Well, if your dollar is much more valuable than it should be, that means everything abroad is cheaper. So if you're a consumer, that's great. That means like, you pay less for those Nike shoes that are made in some Chinese sweatshop, right? But it also means that like, lots and lots of things that used to be produced here, it makes sense to produce them somewhere else. And so to me, I think that a lot of what the Trump administration is trying to do with these tariffs is they're really, really trying to adjust the terms of trade. They are trying to put these tariffs on to make those foreign goods more expensive in an effort to try to reverse those trends and bring some of that production back here. Because the thing is that when you think about this industrial capacity, the industrial capacity is important in and of itself, but it's especially important if you're going to be some global power. If you're going to be a global power and you're going to be a military power, you have to have that manufacturing capacity. Like people always tell these stories about, well, during World War II, we started building all these ships and like there weren't a lot of people working in shipbuilding back then. And yet like, look at how productive we were and look at how many ships we built and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, but the thing is yes, we produced a lot of stuff during World War II. You know why? Because we already had the industrial capacity and all we had to do was like shift it towards a different use.
Yes.
Right? It was just like,
that's literally what
yes.
we did. I mean, the car dealers started making tanks and airplanes.
Yeah, so you had people shift their production, but the capacity to do that was already there, right? And so the thing is like this isn't just about like this isn't just about manufacturing jobs. This isn't just about like this isn't just about trying to collect tax revenue from the rest of the world. Like part of what this is about is that we are moving into a world where if we don't have the amount of industrial capacity that we need to fight a major conflict, we're going to end up in a major conflict, or we're going to just end up like essentially acquiescing to some other power because they have the capacity, and we look at it and go, I don't think we can win. And I mean, if you talk to people who are doing, if you talk to people who are looking at scenarios about, all out war with China and things like that, like there are lots of them who are like, yeah, like given our capacity, like we can't do it, like we can't win.
It's horrifying.
And so this is the big thing is that I think we lose sight of this. And I think we lose sight of it for the same reason that we lose sight of a lot of things. Like we noticed this most clearly during the pandemic is that like the way you make decisions as a leader is you bring people into the room who have various types of expertise and you listen to all of them because they're going to be able to speak to whatever their expertise actually is. But you have to bring all those people together. And then as a leader, you kind of have to make the decision of what to do based on all the things that you've just been told. And what we learned in the pandemic is like we had a lot of really bad leadership because that's not what people were doing. They were just like, oh, well, that guy's the expert, so we'll just listen to him. And it's like, no. That guy's an expert on a very specific thing, right? But like the policy we're enacting, it involves that specific thing, but it also involves all these things over here. What about the experts in those things? And so the thing is that we have become so narrowly focused on sort of like economic efficiency and just on, what's going to produce more economic growth, that we sort of have lost sight of some of these other things that like, no, like as a state, like you actually have to be able to deter your enemies from attacking you. So that means you not only have to have a strong military, but you also have to have the industrial capacity to ramp up military production. You have to have that capacity. You have to have, and we do not. And so there's a lot of the tariffs are going to, are designed to try to reset those terms of trade and to kind of get these things going. And I think that the other thing too is that, I mean, it depends where Trump goes with this. But the thing is like if Trump levies and like if he sticks with this like across the board 10% tariff on everybody, I'm sorry, but like most of us are not going to notice this at all.
Right.
We're not going to notice it at all. There are going to be a bunch of people in my profession who go out and do a bunch of research and they find that like, oh, well, like this industry is not doing well because of this, or like this group of consumers is not doing well or whatever. There's going to be stuff like that. But the thing is by and large in the aggregate, most of us are not going to really notice it. And I think that's, and I've tried to warn people in my profession, because a lot of people in my profession, you know, I mean, it's like any other profession. There's Trump derangement syndrome everywhere. And so there's so many people in my profession who they hate Trump so much. And so like they look at this and they just go, oh, these tariffs are going to be a disaster. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. And they're stating these like doomsday scenarios. And the problem is that when those doomsday scenarios don't materialize, that undermines the entire profession. It undermines the entire, I mean, it's the same exact thing that we talk about with COVID all the time, where you just had people making ridiculous, you know, predictions, and then they don't come true. And then it's like, well, don't have to listen to that person anymore. And I think like, you know, I've been trying to warn people in my profession, because there is actual research, you know, from the previous Trump administration when they did a lot of these things, and a lot of the predictions that people made didn't show up in the data.
It's off topic, but it's along those lines. It's one of the reasons that like, I'm not talking about sports and stuff, because like, who cares? People predict sports, who's going to win a championship, and it doesn't matter. Who cares? But like the Weather Channel stuff, you know, if you go back over the last few years, you've seen this influx of the weather. A hurricane is brewing in the Gulf, for example, or the conditions are ripe for tornadoes in April and May. And the media, and I'm part of it, they turn that into this 3-day event. You know, it's going to be really, really bad, and people get really, really scared, and people get, you know, they lock down, and then it doesn't really materialize. And people put their guards down. We're seeing this in Texas on two fronts. One, the people there had gotten tired of there's no reason for your phone to go off at 3:30 in the morning with a severe thunderstorm warning has been issued in your area. It's like, well, what the hell are you going to do about it? I mean, it's a thunderstorm. We get thunderstorms, right? I mean, there's a difference between a thunderstorm and there's a tornado warning in your area. Your home could be blown to bits in the next hour. You need to get to a safe place. There's a severe thunderstorm in your area. Okay. And so you have this deal in Texas, which is an absolute tragedy that in some ways was probably preventable, and in some ways could have been lessened if they didn't issue, they did issue warnings, but I think people had gone numb to warnings. People who lived in that area were like, everybody says it's going to be a historic flood. Every time there's a storm, it's a historic flood. It's a flood. You say that so many times, those words you become nose blind to those words. And then you have this story that is developing that the national media will never touch. And that's this Austin fire chief, Joel Baker. He's a fire chief. What should your first priority be when you're a fire chief?
Putting out fires, preventing fires.
Things fire related.
Right.
You know what he said was his highest priority? Diversity. Nope. That's not it. Nope. When your job is to fight fire and to do things that fire departments do, which is save lives. You know, they've got this, they've got a rescue swimmer program in that area. Wasn't deployed that morning. I don't know, could some of those little girls and other people have been saved? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But if the rescue swimmers don't go out to rescue swim, they can't take the shot. They can't make the shots they don't take. And so you have all of those kinds of things that I think, I don't know, just
there's an internet meme, and the internet meme is like, you can just do things. And I think the reason that this has become a meme is that in most of our daily life, like, you're kind of prevented from doing things. Like, you can't just, like, you have a problem to solve. Like, you can't just go solve it. Like, you've got to go through like layers of bureaucracy, or you have to like get permission to do this or get permission to do that, or you've got to do, and it's become completely ridiculous.
Yes.
Like everything takes forever. Like, and this is the thing, is that this is what people are upset about. People are upset because all of these things keep happening, and you look at them and you're like, this was so much worse than it had to be.
Yeah.
And
anytime you have 18 committees for something, it's not going to go efficiently. It's not going to go well. There's a college football NIL story out today that there was an NIL opportunity for a college quarterback. I don't think the story named the quarterback. He had to go through this Deloitte NIL Go thing. And by the time he got approval, the event had already happened. You got to have some common sense in things. I think maybe that's a worldwide problem. It's clearly an American problem. We've kind of lost our sense of common sense.
Well, I mean, what my concern though is,
and the reason I was getting into that was the whole Trump derangement thing. Is like, yeah, but why? Like, what is this obsession with so many people? Like you said, they hate the guy so much that they've lost their sense of rational thought. I mean, even if you're offended by some of the things that the man does, you're not having dinner with him. What difference does it make? He should be just judged on his leadership or lack thereof, not on whether, I don't know.
Well, my bigger concern here is like, we should use a lot more common sense in our daily lives. My concern is, are we not using common sense because we're not allowed to, because we've created all of this crap that prevents us from just doing something? Or actually, are we actually like losing people who actually know what common sense is? Like, because common sense, if you think about what common sense is, it's not really, it's not necessarily innate to you as a human being. Like, what it is it's something that it's like wisdom you've accumulated just by living. Right? Like, you grow up and you absorb so much information from like your parents and relatives and teachers and things like that actually has nothing to do with like what you're supposed to be learning. It's just like you're learning about life without anybody even teaching you about life, because you kind of observe what's going on. But if we kind of get away from those like standard ways of behaving, standard ways of making decisions, like if we get away from that, then future generations don't grow up with that common sense because they don't see it, right? Because a lot of what we say is common sense. Like, it's actually stuff that we've learned. It's just that we don't know where or when that we learned it. We just kind of absorbed it from living life. And a lot of it came from things that we observed when we were kids, or little like sayings, that like your grandparents had when you were a kid. Like, that was a way of conveying common sense to you, is they would always have some goofy saying.
Yeah.
But the thing is you remembered the saying, and that like instilled in you this common sense. And I kind of wonder, okay, are we just getting away from it? Like, have we become a society where you're not allowed to use common sense, or are we becoming a society where common sense isn't actually all that common? Because I think the latter is way worse. Way worse.
I think it's the latter.
Yeah.
I do. I think it's the latter. I think.
Well, I think the former leads to the latter, because if you create obstacles to common sense, eventually it's not going to be common sense anymore, because people just are not going to accumulate that knowledge. They're not going to absorb that in their daily lives. They're not going to have those little sayings, that your grandma used to say, and they're just not going to have that. And so they're not, it's not going to be instilled in them like it was in previous generations. And I think this is a problem, because if you look at it, like if you look at so much of society, like so much of society is just red tape. It's just red tape and stupidity. Like, there are just so many things that you just can't do, because you got to go, like, oh, you want to do that, you got to go talk to this person, or you got to go do this. And look, in some instances, you do need people to go talk to other people about what they're going to do. But in other instances, it's like, just do it. Like, just go do it. And I do. I do worry about this because I think that this is a problem. This is a real problem of like large organizations, like whether you work for like a big corporation or like a university or something like that, or the government. When you work for these like big organizations, you know, what happens is that the like behavior becomes much more like sort of rule based, right? Like you got to check all the boxes before you can do the thing that you want to do. And, but also the other problem is that I think a big reason why we have this lack of common sense decision making is I think that we lack the actual leadership that we need in society. Like there are too many leaders who lead, they try to lead by consensus.
Yes.
Like I'm going to get everybody in the room. We're going to talk about this and then we're going to reach a consensus on what we should do. If that's what we do, why do we need you, the leader? Like that, what leadership are you providing if we're all just going to like come reach a consensus? Like we can all get together without you, right? And if we can reach consensus, then we don't actually need you.
Yeah.
The whole point of the leader is that you're never going to reach consensus. And that in fact, if you try to govern by consensus, you're going to govern by false consensus because there's going to be a lot of things where people just don't want to rock the boat. So they don't say anything. And so then you do this stupid thing. And then there's a person in the back of the room who would have prevented you from doing this stupid thing, but they were too afraid to speak because no one else was bringing this up and everybody else was going to push back. And so I'm not going to say anything because I don't want.
You only employ a hand raised guy if you want a hand raised guy to speak up.
Right.
If he's going to sit back in the back or she's going to sit back in the back and not say anything, you don't need him.
No. But I think if you try to govern by consensus,
yes,
you end up getting rid of those people, whether you know it or not. Because
and you get rid of few of them exist.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that there is, I think this is a problem that's actually like inherent to just big organizations. It happens in government. It happens in universities. It happens in big corporations. It's just one of these things where the organization gets so large that there's just sort of like, oh, we got to get everybody on board and we've got to do this and we got to do that. And like, that's not how you lead. That's not how you make decisions. I mean, I don't, to give an example, I see this at the university all the time. The university all the time, there'll be a meeting and it's sort of like, oh, like, you know, let's try to reach, you know, what should we do about this? Let's all try to reach a consensus. When I took over as chair, I mean, I told my department, I was like, listen, there are times when I'm going to come to you for advice or I'm going to come to you for your opinion. But that's all it is. At the end of the day, like I'm the one who has to make the decision about some of this stuff. And so like, I'm going to come to you, but like, we're not taking a vote and we're not doing that because like, I'm the one who's going to have to live with what we do. And so like, I'm going to make the final call. And sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's hard. And when it's hard, I'm going to come to you and I'm going to ask you for advice. I'm going to ask you, you know, hey, what do you think we should do here? Or like, you know, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think about that? But you have to make those decisions. Like you cannot govern by consensus. And we as a society have just become like a society where like nobody is in charge. I mean, there are titles. There are people who are officially in charge, but nobody's in charge. But that's how things fall apart. Because that's the whole point of the leader. The leader is there because that's where the buck is supposed to stop, right? Like there's something that's going wrong. I mean, honestly, we talk about this all the time, but this was the big problem in the Biden administration is that we had a dementia patient in the White House. Like this guy didn't know where he was. Okay. So there was nowhere for the buck to stop. Like people are like, why was this administration so chaotic? It's very obvious why it's so chaotic. Because the person in charge is not really in charge. They're a figurehead. So if they're a figurehead, when things start to go crazy, there's nowhere there's no person to step in and go, whoa, we can't do this, right? Like we've got to stop and we got to do something else. Like this is not working. So you had all these things that just seemed like they were spiraling out of control because they were spiraling out of control, but they were spiraling out of control because it was like, we're just going to run this by committee. Like we're all experienced. We've all worked in government before. Like we can do this. Like we'll all just do our own thing. And then like that'll all work. And it's like, no. Like there's a reason that there's like a person at the top of this whole organization because that person has to be the person who makes the final decision, who says, no, we're not doing this or yes, we're doing this.
Well, and in the Biden administration, by the end, also there was no one to be held accountable.
No.
So no one was holding Biden accountable.
No.
Until his own party did when they kicked him out. But the point remained. All right, so let's talk big, beautiful bill. Trump's been obsessed with it, got it through the House. We have a couple of questions about it. Will, who's waited patiently for this one to be answered, he says, wants to know your opinion on the public land sale package that was in the big, beautiful bill. So if you want to work that into your overall thoughts, then there's some other questions as well.
I think most of that got stripped out of the bill. The land purchase stuff. I'd have to double check that, because that was a thing that people were fighting over until the very last minute of things, and I think that got stripped out, or at least stripped down. So when it comes to land sales, like, this is actually one thing that we've talked about before with respect to government debt, is that I've said, like, one reason why the United States government can accumulate so much debt is it's not just that, like, we have, it's not just that people hold our debt as a global reserve asset. It's also the fact that the United States government is really weird in the sense that it owns, like, tons and tons of wealth. Like, it actually owns, like, a bunch of assets. And one of those assets, probably, like, one of the most valuable assets, depending on how you want to measure that. So maybe it's not necessarily purely monetary value, but one of the most valuable assets that they have is all of this public land. And to me, I'm not really sure, like, what's going on here with the public land, because there's, like, this very, very small but vocal part of our political system that's really, really adamant that we need to start selling off some of this land. And the arguments that they make are kind of bizarre. Like, the arguments are like, we just don't have enough affordable housing. What does that mean? Like, who are we selling the land to? Like, where is the land? Like, who's going to live there? Like, because a lot of the land that they're selling, I don't think is going to feature affordable housing. Like, it's certainly not going to be government housing. Okay. Like, it's not going to be that, right. What the government calls affordable housing, which is actually like Section 8 housing or something like that. That's certainly not what they're talking about. But they kind of sell it as, well, this is going to be, this is just going to make it more affordable for younger people to buy a house and things like that. But I don't, like, the land that they want to sell. Like, I don't think that young people could afford that land either. Like, if that land came for sale, like, it's probably going to be wealthy people who are going to be moving there. And if they're moving there from some other place, yes, then that's a net increase in, like, housing value. But, like, if they're buying it as a second home, that's not really making housing, that's not increasing the housing supply or making it more affordable.
Will says lumber, lithium, other valuable natural resources.
Well, it depends. Well, see, this is the other thing, is, like, this is the thing I can't understand, because some of the arguments that they make are, we need this land for, like, logging and things like that. But some of the land, it's like, we need this to build housing. And so the thing is that when we're talking about natural resources, we might actually want to sell some of the land that, where you could do logging. We might actually want to sell some of the land where we can access some of those natural resources. We might want to do that just so that there are private companies that have access to it. The thing about it is like, the messaging that's coming out from the people who are most vocally in favor of this is just kind of bizarre, because that seems to be like a lower priority than what the sort of natural resource stuff seems to be a lower priority to them about what we're doing here. So in general, but basically what I would say is this: in general, if you own an asset, okay, if you just own land somewhere, at some point you're going to sell the land, whether it's you, me, like our descendants,
right,
or whether we're talking about the United States government.
Right.
At some point you're going to sell the land, at some point. But if you're going to sell the land, then essentially what you're doing is you're solving it, like what we call in economics an optimal stopping problem, which is essentially like, okay, once I sell this land, I can't sell it ever again. It's a one-time deal. So I got to figure out when to sell it that's going to give me the most value, right? And so when you are, the thing is that other than the land where we might need some of these natural resources, we're almost certainly not butting up against like that optimal point in time where we need to sell this stuff. Because what you're like if you so for example, if you're thinking about like one of the other arguments they made is like, well, this will help us pay down some of the national debt. Is like we can sell some of this land. And but the thing is like if that was actually your objective, you would actually want to think about whether that land is going to be more valuable controlling for inflation like 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now. You would want to have some expectation of that before you make that decision now. So I think that at the margin, we could probably sell some of this land at the margin, like the land that will free up some natural resources is probably worth selling. But like the much bigger plan about how much land to sell and about, oh, we can build so many homes on this and all this kind of stuff, like that sort of stuff never really sort of made economic sense to me. And so that kind of sends up a red flag about like, what are we doing here? Like who benefits from this kind of thing?
So what was your overall assessment of what ultimately got passed?
Well,
because I think Grind makes a pretty good point here. And you and I joked with you about this. I was on beach time for 2 of the last 3 weeks. And unlike earlier in my life where I had a hard time disconnecting, I found it quite easy to disconnect this time. And I was not paying attention. I would get a text from you. I'd get something from Ike. Often I was in the midst of consuming a beer, sitting on a beach at the time, and I was like, whatever. I mean, not my problem right now. And I didn't pay a lot of attention. So I'll be honest, I don't know that I've read a lot about what's actually in the bill. And Grind makes a point here that I tend to agree with. He says, am I the only one disappointed in Congress? Most people are scared as hell of the big, beautiful bill, but I don't think most people know what's in it. The media will do what they do, so expect nothing from them, which I think is basically true. No one really knows what the hell's in it. I have a suspicion you've read quite a bit about it. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think the thing that actually makes it the hardest to assess for like the general public is that the way that Congress handles budgeting is so completely ridiculous, right? So when they talk about budgets, like they're talking about like 10-year budgets. And so this makes it extremely confusing. So for example, one of the things that the bill does is it makes the tax cuts that came from the first Trump administration, it makes those permanent. So, but the way that this is actually done, like in the accounting sense, is those were originally temporary taxes. Now, of course, no one expected them to be temporary tax cuts, right? Everybody expected, okay, you pass these tax cuts, they're going to try to make these permanent, right? Nobody expected these to be temporary. But because they were called temporary, you had all of these people who were like, well, those tax cuts are going to cost us like X trillion dollars over the next like 10 years. But that's trillions of dollars relative to if we didn't extend the taxes, which it's like, okay, but everybody anticipates that we were going to do it. And like the fact that Trump won implies that that's what we were going to do. So like that stuff doesn't count. But the thing is that it's actually because of this accounting practice that it makes it so confusing, because Congress games the system. The way that Congress games the system is that Congress said, in a reconciliation bill, you got to figure out a way to pay for stuff. So like they're like, oh, well, this is going to increase the deficit if we extend these tax cuts. So then what we'll do is we'll just do this thing here, or we'll get rid of this tax, but we'll make that temporary. And so actually it won't cost us that much money. And like they do all these little accounting tricks. But then the problem is that like the media, when they report on this, all they do is they go get like a Congressional Budget Office like report. And the Congressional Budget Office is the one that does all of this goofy accounting. And they just go get that report and they go, well, the report says that it's going to cost us like, this number of trillions of dollars. And so like, but that's the thing is like, that's trillions of dollars relative to all these little accounting tricks that everybody's doing. Right. And so it makes it really, really hard to assess. So first and foremost, there were lots of people who were upset about this because there were all of these numbers that were coming out saying, oh, this is going to blow up the deficit. This is going to like blow up the debt. This is going to do this. To those people, welcome to reality. This bill is not going to blow up the debt. The debt is already blowing up.
Yeah, it's
like this is not like so. And the eye-popping numbers that people are giving you, these are based on assumptions that like, oh, we're gonna, these are based on assumptions that we were gonna get rid of these tax cuts, like that they were just gonna go away. And I don't think anybody anticipated that was the case. And you had like Elon Musk, he's been crashing out on Twitter about this bill for months now. He started his own political party.
Yeah.
And
the American Party.
Yeah, the American Party.
So if you're against the American Party,
yeah,
makes you anti-American.
And and so far, I don't think anybody on the staff of the American Party has been born in the United States, which is another ironic thing. But I think but so he's been losing his mind about this. And even his premise of like, oh, I'm going to start this like America Party or whatever is like, we're going to have sensible government. Let me let you in on a little secret. The reason that we can't reduce the deficit, the reason that we can't bring down the debt is there is no political constituency. You cannot win if your platform is, I am going to take away some of your benefits and I'm going to raise your taxes. But that's just what we need to do.
Yeah.
Well, run on that.
Yeah. Good luck.
Let's see how many votes that you get running on tax increases and benefit cuts.
If you get to November won't go well.
Yes,
right.
you're not like that. I'm sorry. There's nobody's going to vote for that. And this is the fundamental problem.
Literally, the person running against that could just go, nah.
Yeah. If you're running against him, you can just go, I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
I don't even have a plan. Yeah. I'm just not going to do that. Like, that's it. My plan is to not do that.
I hadn't really thought about a plan, but I'm not going to do that.
The thing, like, that is a plan that, like, Kamala Harris could win against, I think. Like, she could go up there and just say nonsense, and her opponent is like, I'm going to raise your taxes and cut your benefits. And they're like, I'm going to go with the crazy lady. Let's go with the wine ant. Let's go like this. I mean, so if you look at the federal budget and you look at the top spending items in the federal budget, it's like Social Security.
Yeah, by the way,
Medicare.
I got to interrupt real quick and say this. To the Democrats who hate Trump so much, you've run two horrible candidates against him. Some of it's on you.
Arguably three. But I guess the third one at a time
you've run three.
At a time would have been a reasonable person, but maybe pre-Alzheimer's or whatever. The
point taken.
I think, but I think this is the problem. If you look at federal spending, what are the big line items? It's like Social Security, Medicare, interest on the debt, defense. What are we cutting of those four things? Like, we're going to cut Social Security? No, we're not going to do that. We're going to cut Medicare? No, we're not going to do that. We're going to cut interest payments on the debt. Actually, that's not up to us. Okay. We're going to cut defense? No, we're not going to do that. Okay. So, but those are the big four line items. And actually, once you get past those big four line items, the amount of money like drops off pretty dramatically by category. So those are like the four big ones. And nobody's going to touch those things. And so if nobody is going to touch those things, like this, we're on this path. Like you cannot remain in denial. Like, we are on this path. We are going to continue on this path, and we're going to continue on this path until something breaks. That's just the way that it is. We're going to continue on this path. People are going to continue to kick the can down the road as long as they possibly can. And they can probably kick it down the road a lot longer than you think.
Yeah.
Like, they can continue to kick it. And then they will get to what you think is the end of the road, and it will turn out there's more road. We're going to keep kicking. Like, they'll build a new road onto the old road to just keep kicking that can. There is...
that is very likely, isn't it? That's where it's going to go. I mean,
yeah,
no one's coming in at this point in American history and walking in and going, this is a mess. We've got to change everything.
Well, and the other thing is this. One of the big things that this bill did was provide a lot more money for immigration enforcement. And
which is still the hot topic thing in the media.
And so so the thing is okay, if you are the Trump administration and you're faced with these prospects, right, which is we can get more money for immigration enforcement, which is what I ran on, right? Or we could just cut all of that out and like think of all the money that we would save. You're not benefiting yourself, your party, or arguably your country by doing that, right? So the thing is that if you are going to, if you are in this environment right now and your party platform is like, we're going to cut spending even on things that like we want to spend money on, like A, you're going to lose. And B, even if you're successful, when you do lose, your political opponents are going to take all that money you saved and they're going to spend it on the stuff that they want to spend money on, right? This is the issue that we've gotten to now, is we have two political parties who've basically realized they're playing a game of chicken, right? Like they have realized they're going to spend money on what they want to spend money on. And so any dollar that I cut is a dollar they're going to spend on what they want to spend money on. So I might as well spend the dollars that are available to me on the things that I want to spend money on. Because if I don't, we're not actually saving money. We're just going to spend it on your thing instead. And so they're locked into this bad equilibrium where they both just want to spend any dollar that they have on the thing that they want to.
Which brand of pork gets purchased.
Yeah. And so the thing is that what people have to recognize is that this is going to continue. It's not going to stop. It's not going to stop until something breaks. Like this is what, like, you know, when I come on here and I talk about the debt is unsustainable, this is what I'm talking about. Like the debt is unsustainable. But the thing is something can be unsustainable for a pretty long time. And they're going to try to, and by all accounts, neither party has any desire to try to fix that right now. Like they're content to just keep kicking the can down the road, keep spending the money on the stuff that they think that we should be spending money on, and moving it like that. So we're going to continue down this path until something breaks. Like if the bill hadn't passed, there would have been very, very significant tax hikes. Like if they wouldn't have passed the bill, all of our taxes would have gone up. How many people would have been happy with that? Not many people. Some people who are super worried about the debt might have been like, oh, or some people who think that they're not going to pay it, or some people who, or people who aren't going to pay it. Like they might be happy, but most.
It's a fundamental problem in our country is that we have a lot of people that don't pay tax.
Well, and this is the other thing. So here's another issue.
And then we have people who fail to realize that we pay tax on every damn thing. I mean, everything is taxed and retaxed and taxed and retaxed. You don't have control of your you don't get to keep as much of your money as you should be able to keep. I interrupted you. I apologize.
No.
It's a thing.
No, I was thinking about something else, which is it's not just it's not just about the taxes either. It's about the framing of this debate. Like there was a lot of consternation about they're cutting Medicaid. Oh, they're cutting food stamps. They're doing all these things. First of all, again, these are like a lot of this is accounting tricks, right? So when they cut Medicaid, it's not like we were spending this amount of money and now we're spending a fraction of that money. When they cut Medicaid, what that really means is they're cutting the rate at which it's scheduled to increase over the next 10 years, right? Like originally we were going to increase it by 5%. Now we're going to increase it by 3%. And they're like, oh, that's a cut. Well, it's not money. Like, yes, it's a cut relative to what we were planning on spending, but it's not a cut. Like, I mean, you would not use this in any other like realm of your life, right? Like you would not plan a vacation to Disney World and then go someplace cheaper and go, look at how much money that we cut. Like, no, you still went on vacation. You still spent money, right? Like, so like if you wanted to save money, you could have just not gone on vacation. Like, and so yes, you did save money by not going to Disney World and by going somewhere else, but like you still spent a significant chunk of that money on some other vacation. Okay. So, but you didn't like, so,
I mean, if you were truly being economically efficient, you wouldn't go on the vacation. You just stayed home.
Right. And you wouldn't, well, and also the thing is like, you wouldn't say like, well, this vacation this year only cost us, 10% more than last year. And if we would have gone to Disney World, it would have cost us 20% more. Like, that's not how you think about it, right? Like that's, so the thing is that the framing is wrong. But the other thing is We have to have a serious conversation in this country about these programs, about Medicaid and about food stamps and things like that. There are 42 million people on food stamps in the United States. 42 million. That's like 12% of the population.
It's crazy.
Okay. That is completely insane.
It's
completely insane.
It is absolutely unsustainable, insane, and it feels like there's an obvious fix.
Well, the other thing here is that you.
But the obvious fix is mean.
Well, but this is the thing is. This is kind of where I'm going with this is like nobody wants to have these conversations. Nobody wants to have these conversations where we say, we're spending beyond our means.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're spending beyond your means, like if you as a family like have ever had to cut your spending, right? If you like lost a job or you didn't get a bonus or something, right? Like anytime that your income was less than what you thought it was going to be, you got one of two options. Like you got this vacation planned and you've got one of two options. You can put that vacation on the credit card or you can just not take the vacation. And you know what? You really want the vacation. You really want it. You don't want to cancel it. But the thing is, you have to ask yourself,
sometimes you have to.
Can you afford it?
I've canceled vacations.
Yeah. And so if you're like, hey, I'm going to have to put this on the credit card and, I don't know how I'm going to pay for it, you shouldn't be going. And that's the thing is that this is what the United States government is doing. Like they spend all of this money on stuff. And the argument is always, there's a constituency for everything. Everybody's getting every dollar that they spend is going to someone, right? Like every dollar they spend is going to someone. No person who's getting that dollar is saying, nah, you know what? I don't really need that dollar.
No.
But you know what? That's not the point. The point isn't, do they want the dollar? The point is, can we afford the dollar that we're giving them? The point is, at what point do we cut people off? Because that's the other thing is like, you can have a social safety net, but one of the things that they've been doing for years is they've been expanding these programs and they expand the programs to include more and more and more people. And when they expand the programs to use more to include more and more people, the costs explode, but also you create all of these disincentives. Like one of the things that people don't think of is they don't think about like effective marginal tax rates. And so what I mean by that is that, yeah, you can look up what the tax rate is based on your income, right? But we need to think about people's effective marginal tax rate. Okay, so for example, if I'm getting a government benefit, right? If I'm getting a government benefit, like let's say that like, I get this government benefit and the government benefit here is like, okay, if I make $10,000 a year, the government gives me $2,000 or something like that. But if I make $1 over that $10,000, not only do I have to pay a tax on that dollar, but I lose the $2,000. Okay, that's over a 20% tax on you to earn that extra dollar. Like it's over a 20% tax on your entire income.
Yeah.
Right. And so if we think about the marginal dollar, actually, your effective marginal tax rate is enormous because you're paying $2,000+ on the income of $1, right?
Yes.
But we do this throughout all these programs where we're like,
because our tax code's too complicated,
Yes.
Josh. It's stupid. The tax code is idiot. It's even people like you who study it. You probably could get confused by the American tax code. So imagine what it's like for the average American. They don't even think about it, which is, Grind has a point here, and I've been saying this for a long time. And I started saying this when I became essentially a contractor. Because I get all of my money. I get, like, back in the day when I worked for Yahoo, I guess I still technically get one more Yahoo check. Hey, Yahoo, hang in there. They sent me the whole check.
Yep.
I got to look in my bank account every month, and there's all of my money. And then I got to get the call from my accountant. Hey, are you ready for me to run payroll? Yeah. Watch it go. State tax, federal tax, So you see the percentage of your money go away. I think if everybody saw that, there would be some revolt. If everybody saw their money, if everybody had to go to the local county courthouse and monthly or annually or biannually or whatever and cut a check for their taxes, people would start going, wait a minute, why am I being taxed so much? But we live in this denial where the system's got you tricked. You never see your money.
Yeah.
It's we do this for you. Don't. Shouldn't. But like Grant asked a question, what would happen if we just had a national, I think he used 9%, had a flat tax that everyone paid. If you made $1 million, you paid 9%. If you made $100, you paid $9. Everyone paid a percentage, and maybe we did some things with property taxes. Maybe we had a consumption tax. Isn't there a way to revamp the American tax code and make it where it makes more sense?
Here's what we're gonna have to. It's one of the options that we're gonna have to move to. Basically, the situation we're in right now, there's 4 solutions. The first solution is like broad-based tax increases. Like taxes go up on everyone. Everybody pays more taxes. Now, you can do this in a variety of ways. One is to do something like that where you just broaden the base, where you say, because right now one of the issues is that there are a lot of people who don't pay federal income taxes.
Yeah.
And they don't pay federal income taxes because they don't.
The
because they don't have enough. They don't earn enough income to actually pay.
Yeah.
To actually pay into the system. Which this is another thing too, is like getting into the psychological thing. Look at like the culture and how it celebrates like tax refunds. Or like the tax refund is the most bizarre thing. Why are you celebrating? You gave the government an interest-free loan for an entire year.
You gave them too much of your money. Your money that could have been gaining interest, you gave it to the government.
Yeah, you could have done something with that money. You could have invested that money. You could put it in the stock market. You could put it in a bank account. You could have gone on vacation. You could have done these are things you could have done with this money.
Yeah.
But you let the government hold on to it. But that's the thing is, there's going to have to be something like a shift to a tax, like a more broad-based tax like that, where we just basically say, look, there's like a flat rate, but like everybody pays it no matter what. Like there's going to have to be something like that. Or there's going to have to be something like a value-added tax or a national consumption tax or something. There's going to have to be a way to get people to pay more taxes. So that's solution number 1 is higher taxes. And that's going to mean higher taxes on everybody. Like the person making $1, the person making $1 billion, everybody's going to pay higher taxes. The second, the second thing is that we start slashing government spending.
Yeah.
But if we're going to slash government spending, what that's going to mean is entitlement reform. Yep. And by entitlement reform, that means Social Security, Medicare get less generous. Like, we raise the retirement age. We take away some of the benefits that are included in Medicare and say, look, if you want, we're going to provide this basic catastrophic insurance for you as an older person. Like you get cancer, we cover that. But like you go for the sniffles, you got to pay for your own insurance.
Right.
And look, there's already a market for supplemental insurance in Medicare anyway.
Yeah.
So but those are the things, like, because people say all the time, oh, we spend all this money on defense and like we're spending way too much for these tanks. We're spending way too much for these. Okay, let's say that we're paying way too much for the tank and let's say that we're paying way too much for like the fighter jet or whatever.
And we probably are.
I guarantee we're paying too much. But here's the thing, like if we negotiate a better deal, like what are we going to save? Like 10%?
Yeah.
Like, okay, so that also not fixing that's not fixing the budget. So really it has to be entitlements. It has to be entitlement reform. It also has to mean like starting to just get rid of federal government agencies. We have to get rid of agencies. Like we cannot have like an entire bureaucracy that does nothing but just work for the government, right? Like these things are bloated. They're out of control. We can't afford it. Like we literally can't afford it. Like if you want to keep all these social safety net programs, you got to get rid of all of this other stuff. But getting rid of that stuff by itself still is not going to solve the problem because it's so small relative to all of these entitlement programs. Okay, so higher taxes, entitlement reform. Those are the first two options. The other option is we just inflate it away. We just let the Fed just buy more and more of the government debt until, we basically, until like the Treasury is just issuing bonds to the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve is just creating money to buy those bonds, and then the Treasury pays them back with the money that they. So this is, look, inflation. That's another way out of it is if you get high rates of inflation, it becomes, then the value of this debt is going to erode over time.
So you're saying you can just be the fat guy that just keeps buying new pants?
Well, I mean, see, the thing is that if you're the United States government, like, you can print dollars. So if you can print dollars, and you just owe people dollars, like, sometimes you might have to resort to printing the dollars to pay people for stuff. But we know where that leads. And you got to be very careful about
the dollar less valuable.
Yes. And you've also got to be really careful about that too, because like, there's a huge difference between having 6 or 7% inflation a year and like having hyperinflation. The fourth thing is financial repression. So financial repression is what we call like laws that essentially like require participants in financial markets to purchase government debt. So we just tell banks like, you have to buy this debt. And I will tell you that like financial repression has already started. So there's another bill that's been going through, and which is the Genius Act. And the Genius Act is like, oh, we're going to create these like stable coins, right? These dollar stable coins on these like blockchains. Here's what you need to know about that. This bill is designed to get those stable coins in the hands of people who otherwise have no access to dollars. Like, there are people all around the world who live in horrible countries where their governments are printing a bunch of money, and like the purchasing power of their currency is always depreciating, and they just want to hold dollars, because even though the dollar depreciates, it depreciates a hell of a lot less than whatever they're using. And they just want dollars, but they can't get dollars because their government doesn't let them. But if we let people issue these dollar stable coins, all they have to have is a mobile phone and be able to download an app, and they can get those stable coins, and now they have access to dollars. Well, the companies that are going to issue these stable coins, they're going to be required to hold government debt as their assets. So they're going to have to set aside some dollars so that if people want to cash in those coins for real money, they can. But the rest of the money, they're going to have to, they're either going to have to park it at the Federal Reserve, or they're going to have to buy U.S. government debt. This is just financial repression. Like, this bill is being touted as this is a huge, we're just embracing innovation. We're just embracing technology. They're not really, that's not really what it is. It's about providing massive passive demand for U.S. government debt because they have to buy it. So they're not price sensitive. They have to buy it. People want these stable coins. Then, on the asset side of your balance sheet, you got to buy the bonds. Dollar flows in, got to use that dollar to buy a U.S. government bond. And so the financial repression has already started. It's already started. And when you have financial repression, what this is going to mean is it's going to mean that interest rates are lower than they should be. And if interest rates are lower than they should be, that's lower than they should be conditional on whatever the inflation rate is, which means real interest rates are going to be lower. Real interest rates, in fact, might be negative, which means that if you're like putting your money in a checking account or a savings account, that even if it's paying you interest, like in real purchasing power terms, you're actually losing over time. But that's the other option. But those are the four options. We can have broad-based tax increases. We can have entitlement reform. We can have inflation, and we can have financial repression. We can have one of the four. We can have some combination of the four. But that's the only way. That's the only way out of this mess, is those four ways. And what the government's going to try to do is they're going to mess around and try to figure out what the least costly way to them is to do this. And so, this isn't going to stop. Like, this is where we are, and these are the only ways out. And I mean, this is what people have to realize. Like, no one is coming to save you. There is no one riding over that hill. There's no white knight coming over the hill who's going to show up and go, guys, listen, we're going to do it. I know how to solve it. This is how we're going to do it. That's not That's not in the cards. Like there's nobody who's coming to just rescue you. We are in this situation. We have got all of these benefits for a very long period of time. And there's going to have to be a cost. The only question is, what is the cost going to be? And the government's going to try to avoid paying that cost as long as they possibly can. But we're going to have to pay the cost. That's how this works. Like there are no free lunches. You have to pay for things. And if you are paying for things with debt, you eventually have to pay the debt, right? So like there's you have to pay for things. And so, this this is why I say we're on an unsustainable trajectory, because the only ways out are all in some ways painful.
Yes.
And which means that nobody's going to want to do any of those things. And if nobody wants to do any of those things, that's what makes it unsustainable. If there was an easy solution, it wouldn't be unsustainable. We'd just do the easy thing.
Yeah. We're going to stop it there. You good in 2 weeks?
I think so.
Okay. We'll start getting back now that we're getting closer to I know it's July. Summer feels funny. Like, especially when you do all your summering early in the summer. It's like, it's July. It's still a long time before anything really starts with school and all that stuff. But I say that 3 weeks. About 3 weeks we'll be back in routines. But we'll be back in this show routine probably now. So we'll be back in 2 weeks with another edition of the Josh Hendrickson Show. Thanks to everybody in the stream for participating. I'll get this to you in audio form for those of you, for those who weren't watching. I'll have it to you in audio form here later today. So for Josh Hendrickson, I'm Neal McCready. Until next time, take care.